It's hard to believe that I've made hundreds of videos and not one of them has been specifically about the root of all evil. It would almost appear that I have been as remiss on this subject as the ones whom I criticize. So let's change that right now. Imagine all the evils that you can think of: murder, rape, hatred, impatience, jealousy, laziness, dishonesty. The list could go on and on. The links between some evils will be easier to trace than with others. There will be a cluster of sex sins, for example. We might link political corruption at many levels with a lust for power to form another cluster, and we would bunch other sins in a cluster called pride. But what if there was one root for all of them? If we could locate that one root cause, and if we could blast the hell out of it, we might just be able to make a lasting impact on all the other evils in the world as well. Instead of attacking individual sins, or even attacking various clusters, we would be attacking the one single root cause of all the others. But who is doing that? Where is anyone putting all their effort into attacking the common root of all evil? You only have to mention it and you will see just how reactionary and defensive people are about anyone touching on the root of all evil. Go on, say it. The love of money is the root of all evil. That's what the Bible says, and most people know it. But what do religious people say in response to any mention of that verse? There's nothing wrong with money. That's what they say. A lot of people misquote the verse. They say money is the root of all evil. But I never say it that way, and yet it rarely makes any difference. The reaction is much the same. There's nothing wrong with money. It's the love of money that's evil. They don't care whether I say it correctly or not, because it's not really a misquotation that bothers them. What bothers them is that money should be mentioned at all in such a bad light. Why? Well, dare we say it is because they love it? They get so easily offended if you suggest there might be something wrong with money. So let's look at that common misquote. I'm usually a stickler for getting people getting their quotations right when a doctrine is riding on the exact wording. But this is one where the error is, at least in my opinion, relatively minor. Suppose I said drug addiction is ruining our country, and someone immediately shot back, addiction maybe, but not drugs. There's nothing wrong with drugs. It's only that some people don't know how to handle them. Do you get the picture? Can you see that the person who is reacting like that almost certainly uses drugs and is arguably addicted to them? They don't just use drugs, but they like them. You might even be able to say that they love drugs. They rush to their defense by pointing out a distinction that is really quite pointless. Yeah, sure, if marijuana stays on the plant or in the ground, or if people just burned money to keep themselves warm, both drugs and money might be seen as harmless. But these two dangerous commodities do not stay neutral. Addiction is the real problem. Addiction to drugs and addiction to money. If anyone starts talking about doing away with either one, they are going to face some heavy fire from the lovers of money and the lovers of drugs. Paul wrote the actual verse I quoted about the root of all evil in his first letter to Timothy, but Jesus said much the same thing in a couple of other ways in the Sermon on the Mount. What Jesus said is that we need to despise money. Do these people who defend money sound like they despise it? Jesus also used a word that not only includes money, but it includes everything that money can buy. Materialism in general, if you like. It's a word that has been translated as Mammon. Jesus said we cannot work for God and work for Mammon at the same time. He said we are going to end up despising one or the other. Which one do you despise? As you can see, these verses make some huge claims that need to be addressed. Is greed really the cause of all other evils? I'm going to answer that question more precisely in a minute or two. But before I answer that, Let me tell you about a clever trick that I think the Bible Society was first to come up with in their Good News translation of the New Testament. No church anywhere in the world teaches that the love of money is the root of all evil. So obviously they would all like to have a Bible in which that verse does not appear. But at least at the time when the story I'm going to tell you took place, the falling away in the church was not as bad as it is today. It would have been too blatant to just rip 1 Timothy 6:10 out of the Bible. So the Bible Society made two clever little changes to it. The first one was to change the root of all evil to a root of all evil. Think about it. Can there be more than one root for all evil? As you trace the connections between various evil fruit in this one big tree of evils, you get closer and closer to the one common root for all of them. The only way you could have more than one common root would be to have more than one tree. There are not two common roots for all the evils, nor can there be half a dozen common roots. If it's the root of all the evils, then it must be one root. But Greek is written in such a way that the passage itself needs to be studied in order to work out whether the specific article, the in English, is used, or whether the more generalized article, that is a or an in English, is used. So, like I said, when you are talking about a common root for all evils, it can only be one and still make sense. That is how it became translated as it is in the King James Version. They just wrote it like it said, the root of all evil. If you had several little clusters, then maybe you could have several different roots, but not when you put them all in the same basket or on the same tree. So that is when the Bible Society came up with their second little trick. The word all definitely appears in the original Greek. Try as they would like, no one has been able to get around the fact that the original manuscript says all evil. But there is a very clever little English idiom where you say all, but you really don't mean all. And that is what the Bible Society came up with. Let's call it all kinds of evil, someone suggested. And I can imagine the cheers went up immediately. The problem had been solved. The literalists could not say that the word all had been left out, but the rest of the church world would be able to say that it really never meant all evils. It meant all kinds of evil. All kinds can just mean what it says. Every last kind. The big ones, the little ones, the nice ones, the bad ones. All kinds of evil. Every last one. But idiomatically, that phrase is also used to suggest just a lot of evils. A cluster, if you like. Like saying, we had all kinds of trouble getting the car fixed. We don't really mean that we experienced every kind of problem imaginable, just a lot of problems. In a few minutes, I'm going to explain the connections a little better so that you can see that greed really is the cause of all evils. But for now, let's just be honest about what the Bible actually says, okay? Hang in there and I'll explain how it works in a minute. This Bible Society trick is just how desperate the greedy church world is for a change to that very important comment from Paul in the 6th chapter of 1 Timothy. The love of money is the root of all evil. But let's go back to Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says much the same thing, but with a different analogy, to see if Paul really was exaggerating. Jesus tosses out the tree root illustration and talks about the parts of our body instead. He compares our attitude toward money to our instinctive defensiveness about our eyes. Back in the days when men carried their money around in a wallet in the back pocket, there was a saying that the most sensitive nerve in the human body is the one connected to our hip pocket. Jesus was saying much the same thing. The one verse, taken in isolation, just says this: the light of the body is the eye. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, your whole body will be full of darkness. The concept of your eyes being single is, with both of them, focused on the same thing. But if you are cross-eyed, trying to look in two different directions at the same time, you are going to be bumping into things wherever you go. It's a nice illustration. Your eye becomes an illustration for the root cause of problems for your entire body. But what is this eye that Jesus is talking about? You can go backwards or forwards from this same verse, and the answer is there in both directions. The verse immediately before this passage about getting your eyes fixed says, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Okay, so we're mixing metaphors again, but it's still about our relationship with or attitude towards mammon, wealth, treasure, money. Our attitude towards money is what will determine everything else about our morality. By examining our attitude, we will be able to discover the root cause of all our problems, all the other evils that befall us. And what about the verse immediately after the verse about our eyes? Here it is. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. That is the verse I just mentioned earlier. Any religion in the world would assume that the choice is between God and Satan, or God and evil in some generalized form. But Jesus makes it a choice between God and material wealth. He suggests that if we get that right, our whole body will be full of light. I and my Christian friends have all forsaken material wealth and moved in together to build a kingdom of faith and love instead. And we have done it all in the name of the real Jesus of the real Bible. And guess what? It works. So now I'm going to explain a little more about how greed causes all the evil in the world, and about how the whole world could be filled with light if everyone got serious about turning away from money and working for love instead. It all started in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve had a choice between God and mammon. It had not evolved into money at that stage, but it was something physical, material, one of the most basic things we buy with money today: food. It wasn't like God was starving them. They had access to all the food in the garden, except one. They were not to eat of the fruit of just one tree in the middle of the garden. So, you guessed it, that was precisely the fruit that they wanted to taste. They wanted what they should not have. They lusted after that fruit, and they ate it. The forbidden fruit has taken many forms throughout history, but in one way or another, mankind continues to lust after what we should not have and what we do not need. Today, we live in the most affluent period in the history of the world. We are rich beyond comparison. Almost everyone listening to this video sleeps on mattresses that were better than anything that kings and queens slept on 100 or 200 years ago. We move at what would have seemed like lightning speed from one place to another on smooth roads, sometimes even flying through the air in comfort and luxury. We eat whatever our hearts desire. While only the most decadent kings could afford to have horsemen rush snow to them from nearby mountains, we need only open the door to our refrigerator to get ice creams in any flavor we choose. And much the same is true of any food we might desire. But are we happy? No. Yet the greatest insanity of all is that we still think that happiness will come from making just a little bit more of that stuff the Bible called filthy lucre, mammon, money. It is this utter frustration and distraction that causes depression, anxiety, mental breakdowns, infidelity, competitiveness, corruption, boredom, laziness, hate, murder, even wars. Can you see that? It's not immediately obvious up here at the top of the tree that we do these other things because we are not living our lives for love. But when we listen to Jesus and start obeying Him, we do discover that the other problems become heaps more manageable. We have the time to deal with them. We have our lives back, for life is time. And God does not want us prostituting our lives by working for money. That mentality really is the root cause of all the evil in the world. Down here, under the tree and deep in the ground, we see the utter dissatisfaction that has never been resolved for almost everyone on the planet. They are all desperately clinging to the very thing that is making their lives hell on earth. God tells us in such simple and direct terms, the cause of all your problems is your love for money. He says that to us in love. He's not trying to hurt us. I'm saying that in love too. I don't want your money. I want you to be happy. But you won't find it until you let go of what you now so stubbornly defend. Yes, the love of money really is the root of all evil. Jesus went on to say, all the nations of the world worry about what they are going to eat and what they will be able to clothe themselves with. But it must not be so with you. Your Heavenly Father knows what you need. So take no thought, saying, what shall we eat or what shall we wear? But seek first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. Please contact us today if you would like to learn more about living such an amazing lifestyle, building God's eternal kingdom of faith and love, while trusting Him to meet your material needs. Oh, and please subscribe so that you'll be notified as new videos are released. God bless you. Thank you for listening.